Good morning. The Chair is unable to attend, so in accordance with the Council's constitution, please can I request nominations from the committee to chair the meeting just for today? Councillor Amanda Williams.
Hi, can I nominate Councillor John Paul Blundell, please?
Councillor Spanswick.
Yeah, I'd like to second that, please.
Councillor Blundell, would you like to take the chair, please?
Thank you, Meryl. Okay, thank you, members, for this one-time only deal. I'll be here in charge of COSC. So what I will do then is I will kick off with the procedure note, and then we'll go to apologies for absence. So, as the recording's already started. Welcome all to this corporate overview and scrutiny committee meeting, which, due to government advice to the public to practice social distancing, will be held virtually, with committee members and officers accessing the meeting from remote locations. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the council's website to be viewed subsequently. Please can everyone ensure that all mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda on the Thursday, the 24th of February 2022. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their cameras on at that point, but I would ask that, with the exception of myself as chairperson, at all other times you keep your cameras and microphones switched off. This will help minimise background noise and interference and to ensure the connection remains as stable as possible. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Officers from Scrutiny will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and where necessary will mute those not being used. If any member wishes to raise a point or question, they should please click on the raise hand button, which can be found in the top right hand screen of your Teams window, and I will come to you in turn. Please do not use the instant messenger chat to enter any questions. So now, as Lucy's appeared, I will ask her to give the apologies for absence. Thank you, Lucy.
Thank you, Chair. So I've received apologies for absence from Councillor Kay Rawlins, Councillor Gareth Howes, the leader, Councillor Hugh David. Councillor Martin Jones will be leaving the meeting at 10:20, and the deputy leader, Councillor Howell Williams, will be leaving the meeting at 11:30.
Fabulous. Thank you for that, Lucy. Do any other members or officers have any other apologies for absence before we carry on? Just raise your hand and I'll come to you. No, fabulous. Let's kick off. Okay, item 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members or officers have anything to declare at this point? Obviously, we can wait, and if it comes to you later, something you need to declare, please just let us know. No, fabulous. Okay, then we'll move on then to agenda item 3, which is approval of the minutes held on the 19th of January and the 1st of February. So I'll take the 19th of January, please. Can I have a mover for the minutes to see they're accurate?
Move.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer and Councillor Amanda Williams. Okay, I will then take the 1st of February 2022. Can I have a mover and a seconder for them?
Did we get move the correct record, Chair?
Thank you,
Second.
Councillor Spencer. And thank you again, Councillor Williams. Thank you. Okie doke. We will then carry on then to agenda item 4, which is the budget monitoring 2021 to 2022 quarter 3 revenue forecast. I believe, Karis, you're going to be presenting the report today. There you are. And just carry on whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Just for the recording, I'll introduce myself. I'm Karis Lord. I'm the Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change. So as you said, Chair, that the purpose of this report is to provide committee with an update on the Council's revenue financial position as at the 31st of December 2021. So at that point, the overall projected position was a net underspend of £2.5 million, and the detail of this is in the report for you. There was a £2 million net underspend on directorates and a forecast £7 million net underspend on council-wide budgets. This has been offset by a net appropriation to earmarked reserves of £7 million. So the projected underspend on the council budget at quarter 3 does significantly mask underlying budget pressures in some service areas. And these have previously been reported to committee and they do still persist. Namely, these are around home to school transport, the Q3 projections indicate a pressure in the budget going forward. Social Services and Wellbeing Directorate has an underlying pressure in the budget at Q3, but this is masked by grant funding of £2.9 million from the Social Care Recovery Fund, along with underspends on staffing budgets due to difficulties in recruitment, which subsequently impacts on the ability to meet demands for packages of care. With regards to homelessness, the Council has seen a significant increase in the provision of temporary accommodation, particularly as a result of the pandemic. The Council approved a budget growth of £2.1 million in February 2021 to continue with the commitment to focus support for homeless individuals. Following the budget being approved, Welsh Government confirmed that the COVID Hardship Fund was to be extended into the current financial year, including support for temporary accommodation. It has, as members will now be aware, it has been confirmed that the Hardship Fund will not be in place following March this year, and therefore this is obviously a budget issue moving forward into the new year. And then finally, the other main cost pressure within the budget currently is around waste tonnage. We've seen an increase in that in 2021, primarily due to lockdowns and more residents working from home in general, and this trend has continued into the current financial year. Support was received last year and in the first half of 21-22 from the Hardship Fund towards these increased costs. Support is continuing in the second half of the year, albeit that funding is now reduced to 50% of those increased costs. And as the Hardship Fund will not be in place beyond the 31st of March, this underlying budget pressure is likely to continue into 2022-23. As a consequence of the projected one-off underspends, we have been able to create an in-year earmarked reserves to support the capital programme and investment in our communities at this unprecedented time. Just very briefly, in relation to COVID-19, we've obviously continued to claim in relation to increased expenditure and lost income during this year. The figures for the current year are detailed in the report, and just in summary, Chair, as at the end of November, we had submitted expenditure claims to Welsh Government, totalling costs of £9.3 million. Some of that was on hold, but a lot has now been released since the report was written. With regards to income, we've submitted claims for the first 6 months of the year, and they totaled £1.14 million, and 100% of this claim has been successfully reimbursed. The largest element in the lost income does relate to a contribution to the Council's leisure provider during this period, and the details of these claims members can see in tables 2 and table 3 within the report. So throughout the year, we monitor the progress against agreed budget reductions, and these are detailed for you in section 4.2 of the report, and work does continue to be done by services to meet these targets. There is some detail in 4.3 that outlines for you the position for all of the services. Just a couple of extra issues just to draw your attention to. The report does not reflect potential impact on reduction in council tax income, as people have suffered financial hardship. Measures have been put in place to support those facing difficulty in paying their council tax, but there is still likely to be a lower collection rate than normal in the current financial year. We're obviously continuing to monitor this as we go through the year. And also, alongside the impact on council tax, the ending of the furlough scheme and the potential for new restrictions to address the Omicron variant could both manifest themselves with an increased eligibility for council tax support. And again, this is something that both ourselves and Welsh Government are continuing to monitor. So the report details the progress being made by services in meeting their budget reductions for prior years, and this is given to you in table 4 of the report and table 5. So the details on spend for the current financial year up to the end of December 2021 are detailed by service area in Appendix 3 to the report, and you'll see the detail there of particular service area pressures, which I've already outlined earlier in the report for you. So, Chair, if I could, I'd just like to refer you to the recommendations as detailed in section 9 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Gareth. Sorry. Somebody seems to be going around in all the chairs. I planned this still, so that's why I'm in today. Right, so we're going to take, just remember, officers and everyone else to we're going to take out all the report page by page, so we're not jumping about a bit, and we'll try and keep it as organised as physically possible. So as page 1 or page 13 of your packs is the front sheet, I'm going to bring in Councillor Alex Williams because he has a question about the report in general and the timing of it. Alex Williams, Councillor Williams.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thank you, Caris, and your team for another comprehensive report. Just a comment which a number of members and I have made on previous occasions, in that obviously this report was clearly written in advance of Cabinet and at the end of the Q3 outturn at the end of December, and it just seems a little late in the day for it to come to scrutiny for us today. And I think there's a general consensus among members that we would have preferred to have seen a mid-term Q4 outturn update to ensure that we can scrutinise the finances of the council before they actually reach Cabinet. So I think it's obviously too late for this particular council term, but I would urge the local authority to consider that in future so that COSC, Corporate Overview Scrutiny Committee, receives the outturn report at a very early stage so the Cabinet can consider our recommendations going forward. So that's just a general point that I wanted to make on the report, but as the Chair has mentioned, we'll be taking through the narrative page by page. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Councillor Williams. On this very point, before I start to bring speakers in on it, Councillor Martin Jones and Councillor John Spanswick also raised issue with this. So we're going to go Councillor Martin Jones.
Yeah, thank you,
Oh, I
Chair.
thought you weren't there then.
Hmm?
I thought you weren't there then for a second. I thought, am I talking to myself?
No, I just wanted to reiterate what Councillor Williams has said. It'd be so much better if we were sitting here looking at Q4 rather than retrospectively looking at Q3. And I don't know, I've been banging the drum for this for quite some years now, but it's something which we should really give some serious thought to going into the new term for those members, obviously, who will be here. And I think a scrutiny can be much more impactful and supportive, keyword supportive to Cabinet, if we're able to provide some views, representations when they actually review a quarterly finance report.
Thank you for that, Councillor Jones. And then Councillor Spanswick.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with the previous two speakers, and I think it's we have a really good scrutiny process at Bridgend, but we can make it even better again by slightly tweaking the way the dates are set before, and we have the May AGM soon, so we'll have the date set to make sure if we can that corporate scrutiny is timed in with Cabinet to have that sort of pre-decision scrutiny. I'm sure it will be seen a lot more supportive of Cabinet, and he'll give members a scrutiny that they feel they have a bit more input. We're not making decisions, we're making recommendations. And it shouldn't just be finance, it should be for performance reports as well, I feel. So that finance and performance, we can send our thoughts and views to Cabinet to consider in due course.
Thank you for that, Councillor Spanswick. Does anyone want to come back on that? Mark? Caris? I know you've only been in a short time, but I don't know if you want to. Mark?
I'm happy to accept that the principle is right. I suppose what I don't know, Chair, is practicality of that, and perhaps Caris can advise how quickly we get that information together. But I certainly understand the principle of having up-to-date information. It might be more about practicality and logistics.
All right, Caris?
Yes, I mean, I'd agree with Mark, really. We could certainly look at that. And I appreciate there is a time lag between this, because this is reporting a period that's already gone and has actually already been reflected in other reports that you've discussed elsewhere. So I think it's probably something that we could take forward and look at, you know, what period do we report to this committee on our financial position.
Great, thank you for that. I think that's something we'll maybe put in the recommendations and something we can work forward to in the future there for the next administration, whomever that may be. Okay then, so that's all I have on page 13, unless anyone wants to put their hand up quickly. Nope. Nope. So we'll go to page 14 of the report pack, or anyone has any questions on page 14? We'll move on then to page 15 of the reports pack. There we are, Councillor Spanswick.
Thank you, Chair. Just find the point. Page 15, yeah, 4.1.4, home to school transport budget. Except where we are, there's a additional budget pressure dealt with last year, and there's another budget pressure this year taking us to over £2 million. And it can't be sustainable in the future. It feels to me we've been held to ransom by some of the private bus companies and taxi companies. And linked to this is the long awaited review of school catchment areas. So I'd like to understand how we're going to move forward long-term planning this, because there is a time lag in anything with the consultation, but it can't be sustainable in the future to carry on the direction of travel we are, and we urgently need to review school catchment areas. And I'd like to see a timeline on that, perhaps.
Lindsay.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Spanswick. First of all, yes, this is significant pressure, and you'll probably see from previous discussions that one of the challenges we've had is that when we've gone to procurement on most of them, we haven't finished the procurement on certain elements of the home to school transport, but it's significant. We can see it's £750,000 plus, and this is in addition to previous pressures in previous years. Certainly there's been an enormous amount of work undertaken by the Directorate on this. It's not an issue that's singular to Bridgend. Clearly it's an issue that all local authorities are wrestling with at the moment. We have looked at a wide variety of methods of reducing this. We've looked at methods such as effective tracking of vehicles to make sure the routes are minimised. We've looked at working with parents to see whether we can support more individual transport routes for parents to take their children to school. Ultimately, the biggest pressure we've seen most recently, and I think it's alluded to in the report, is a lot of the financial pressures that have been put on the transport providers have come directly to us. So certainly over the next couple of years, we've seen significant uplifts in the costs of providing drivers and transports within those drivers and escorts within those transport areas. So it is significant. The catchment areas, I think, is an allied one. It's certainly something that the call has been made over a number of years. Transport areas, I think, where we need to be careful in this, and I think Councillor Spanswick has alluded to this. There's always a lag with doing this. It's something that we need to think about strategically, obviously, because it's going to affect wherever we make one change, it'll affect another area. So it's a complex matter. And allied to some of the challenges we have with the long-term nature of making any changes to home to school transport policy, it doesn't happen immediately. So it does take, especially in light of public consultation, some 2 years. So all of these things we are looking at, but the points Councillor Spanswick made are absolutely clear, Chair, and I agree with. It is a very, very difficult financial situation for not just us, but all local authorities going forward.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you, Lindsay. Charles, Councillor Smith, the Cabinet Member, do you want to come in on this as well?
Yes, just to say that this problem isn't going to be solved before Q4. I'm afraid this is a long-term problem. There are some things within this problem which are beyond the scope of the powers of an individual county borough council or local education authority. Councillor Spanswick has mentioned one of them, the long-awaited review of home to school transport by Welsh Government. That would be very helpful. To be perfectly frank, we've kicked one of the budget pressures into the long grass until that's revealed, and then we'll be able to make a much more informed decision. But the things going on in the housing market, the fact that lots and lots of our parents now are living in houses which are owned by landlords with sort of short-term contracts, 6 months possible notice to quit. So that makes it very difficult to predict where pupils are going to turn up every September. There's something called parental choice, which complicates matters. And I don't think there is a silver bullet, and reorganising catchment areas is certainly not the single silver bullet. It is necessary to have a look at catchment areas and review them every now and then, but that in itself is not going to solve the home to school transport problem.
Thank you for that, Councillor Smith. I'm going to bring in the two Councillor Williamses. Councillor Alex Williams first.
Thanks, Chair. And just building on what Lindsay and Councillor Smith have said regarding the timescales of this, clearly this is going to be a budgetary pressure going forward because any changes to home to school transport policy would have to go through a significant period of consultation. And of course, the Welsh Government haven't published their policy on the distances in which home to school transport needs to be provided. However, perhaps more generally, I can ask both Lindsay and the Cabinet Member, Councillor Smith, about our more generous home to school transport policy than some of our comparable local authorities, and whether they feel that given the budgetary pressures in this specific public policy area, whether basically the more generous provision that we have in Bridgend is sustainable going forward.
Thanks, Chair, if I may. Yeah, thanks. It's okay, Chair, I'll answer. Thanks, Councillor Williams. Yes, I think if we take members back to when the policy was introduced, I think it came into force it predates me, but I think it was September 2016 when it first started. Now, one of the things that the policy did is it provided some protection to siblings and learners in different phases of education. So whether they're in primary phase, they maintain that eligibility through primary phase, and then similarly when they go into secondary schools. Now, as learners move from phase to phase, naturally we will see less and less of learners being eligible for free home to school transport. We also see then as siblings move on out of the school education system, they then become less and less eligible. So again, this tapering exercise will lower the impact in the long term on home to school transport budget. So that's certainly the case. Councillor Williams is right. Bridgend does have a generous home to school transport policy with regard to the mileage from school. Welsh Government set it at 2 miles for primary and 3 miles for secondary. For some of the eligible groups, that's slightly less. So again, Bridgend does have a generous policy, but it's becoming eligible to less and less pupils as that policy tapers. So, for example, this year we have seen less Year 7 learners being eligible for home to school transport as they've moved from primary to secondary phase. So the biggest issue for us at the moment isn't so much the eligibility with the generous offering that we provide. It's certainly the biggest impact at the moment, and we predict this going forward, is some of the inflationary pressures that we're dealing with when we go to market, because clearly one of the ones that we've seen most recently in the most recent procurement rounds is significant additional costs, which again have been experienced across the board in Wales. So it is a very, very challenging situation. But again, Councillor Williams is right. What we're keen to do is to see exactly what comes out of Welsh Government with regard to the guidance, and then ultimately then it'll be a decision for Cabinet to decide on whether or not we press ahead with changes to our policy on that, and subsequently a substantial period of engagement with the public to inform that decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'm going to go to Councillor Amanda Williams now.
Hi. Yeah, on the home to school transport issue, I've said it time and time again. Lindsay will know I've raised it now for almost the past 5 years. When you look at new estates, you need to look at catchment areas. When you just build a new school and you continue with the catchment areas, it is going to cause problems. Over the last 4 years, 5 years, less and less children are going to Pencoed Comprehensive School. More and more are going to Bryn Teg, and yet we're still paying for a bus to Pencoed from Park Derwin when there's only 4, 5, maybe some years 1 or 2 children go in there from Coity Primary, whereas if they were in the Bryn Teg catchment, they'd be within the 3 miles and they wouldn't be entitled to the bus. So that would be an instant saving. And when we say, oh, but it's a 2-year, it's about a 2-year process, I've been asking this for the past 5 years to look at it. We're never going to get these processes moving forward if we're not going to look at it and listen to local members who know our wards better than anyone else. And likewise, I raise about the fact that I know we're paying for buses in Coity for children who can see the school because they haven't got a pavement on the road they live in to get to that school. And again, if we continue the way we are, we're going to continue paying for buses for these children because we're not putting the infrastructure in place. A little bit of a pavement would save, and I'm just fed up now of constantly asking the same questions over and over again when there's no movement at all. We need to start moving on these areas ASAP. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams. Lindsay, did you want to come back on that, or Councillor Smith, before we move on?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Williams. The second point is more an infrastructure one. The first question with regard to the buses, I think one of the challenges we have, and I mentioned this previously with Councillor Spancer's question, is changing the catchment areas, and I know members are aware of this. As Councillor Smith said, it will resolve some issues, but when I've done this previously, it will present other issues. So it is a complex area. Where you make one change to an ecosystem, and inevitably there will be a challenge somewhere else. With regard to the buses, and Councillor Williams is quite right here. Obviously, we don't want to put on additional buses if we can prevent that. One of the challenges we have, of course, is if there is an existing bus made use of by existing pupils on another route, obviously we'll exploit that and make sure that they gain access on that. So it's not an additional bus, it's just making sure that we use that particular asset for that route. If there is a particular bus that's been put on, obviously I'd be keen to hear about that, because if there is any way that we can mitigate that by using some of the methods I talked about earlier, I'd be keen to do that. So perhaps Councillor Williams, and again, Councillor Williams is absolutely right, just for the record, Councillor Williams has made representations on this to me in the past. But what I suggest we do, Chair, if it's okay with you, I'll be happy to meet with Councillor Amanda Williams after this meeting, and I'll provide a formal update to you through Merrill.
Marvellous. Thank you for that, Lindsay. That'd be great. Councillor Smith, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just to say, we need to be incredibly careful with catchment areas because there are knock-on effects, as Lindsay has just said, and there are unintended consequences. We change the catchment area for pen code, that has a knock-on effect at Bryntaig, and that has another knock-on effect at Bryn Tirion. I don't want to get into controversy, but what I would advise is that all councillors, including myself, keep a very close eye on the forthcoming new LDP and how that is going to affect travel to school. I'll just throw this one out there, that there are proposals for hundreds of houses near a secondary school that I know of, which is already telling people it's full. So just look ahead. Don't just look at where we are now. Let's look ahead as well. That's a controversy to come.
Thank you for that, Councillor Smith. Okay, then, has any other member got any questions for Councillor Alex Williams?
Thanks, Chair. Are we moving on from home to school transport now? Is that okay?
Yeah,
or,
I was going to move on to page 16, but if you're still on page 15.
Well, I do have a couple of other questions on page 15, if I may.
That's fine,
and it's on 4.1.6, and that's on the budget growth potentially being insufficient to meet the increase in demand to tackle homelessness. I just wondered whether any projection had been made on what would be sufficient, or is this just simply an unknown quantity because we don't know how many people are going to present as homeless? It's just a simple yes or no answer, I suppose.
Councillor Patel?
Yeah, it is the latter, that we don't know how many people will be coming in. The numbers have been fairly stable recently, around the 300 mark, but we don't know what mix those people are. So they could be single people, families. So we've seen throughout the pandemic a change. So like pre-pandemic, it was mainly over 50 single people, and we're now seeing an increase in families. Some are single parent families with 2 children, some are single parent families with 1 child. So it is a mix, and I think it is impossible to predict what's happening there.
Councillor Williams, did you want to come back?
Yeah, sure. That's very helpful. Thank you, Councillor Patel. And then just on page 15 as well, 4.1.8. This is probably one for Caris. Given the addition of the £3 million of earmarked reserves, I wondered how this compares with other local authorities in terms of the level of reserves we hold. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Caris?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Williams. Obviously, we're part way through the year, so being able to do a comparison with other local authorities at this time isn't possible. But I think it's true to say that during the pandemic, all local authorities have seen an increase in their reserves. Some of that is because of late monies coming through from Welsh Government, so they go into the reserves and we use them at a later date. I don't think our reserves are particularly high compared to other local authorities. As I said, I think all local authorities are facing increasing in reserves at the minute, but they are all earmarked for specific pieces of work. And some of them are short term, as I said, because they are money that we're having in from Welsh Government, which will slip into next year, which will fund some of these pressures going forward next year.
Thank you for that, Caris. Councillor Williams, did you want to come back before I move on to Councillor Spanswick?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Chair.
No worries, thank you. Councillor Spanswick.
Thank you, Chair. On that very point, just to allow you to understand 4.18, it says Q3 has seen a new £3 million addition to the unallocated capital reserve to be utilised against projected capital pressures. So could I just clarify, so that £3 million addition, is that in the overall, I think it's £9 million unallocated capital reserve we now have? Or is it in addition?
It's now included in that reserve, yes, it's unallocated.
In the is it about 9 million?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Ciao.
Thank you for that, both. Right then. Has any other members got any questions on page 15 before I move on? No, okay. We'll shift on then to page 16 then. Has any members got any questions on page 16? Continuing on from the last page, and then it starts on COVID-19 subheading. Councillor Alex Williams.
Sorry, there aren't many of us here today, so we're
all going to double up.
We have to step up to the plate and ask some questions. 4.1.10. I just wondered whether you could explore which are the volatile budgets. I think on page 26 of our packs, that children's social care is a particularly volatile budget, but I wondered if other corporate directors could indicate exactly which parts of their directorates are particularly volatile as far as their budgetary management is concerned.
Okay, thank you for that. Claire, do you want to go first as you raised your hand?
Yeah, just briefly, if I may, Chair, Councillor Williams has already picked up on children's services being a volatile budget. It's demand-led, and we from time to time will have to make individual residential placements, which can be very costly, and that impacts on the budget, and they're quite difficult to predict in budgetary terms. I would also say the adult social care budget has become increasingly unpredictable post-COVID, as we've seen an increase in needs. As members will know, it's been difficult always to meet needs in terms of domiciliary care, and so it's become more unpredictable in terms of people needing care home placements, and that's older people. The learning disabilities and the mental health budgets can also be unpredictable in that fashion, and there will be times when we'll have individual quite high cost placements, and that adds to the volatility of budgets.
Okay, thank you for that, Claire. Right, Mark's got his hand up, and then I'll go to Janine.
Yes, Chair, just briefly in the spirit of Councillor Williams' questions, really, I won't go into huge depth, but we've already talked about the homelessness budget being particularly volatile and uncertain, really, I suppose, with many variables. I think perhaps less obviously, some of the support budgets get impacted. So, for example, we currently have a fairly significant overspend in the childcare lawyer budget, and of course, as the pressures in children's social care increase, so you will also see potentially pressures within related budgets, such as the childcare lawyer budget. The cost of living crisis means that things, and Karis may want to expand upon this, but obviously things like the council tax reduction budget becomes more volatile and uncertain. And then I would have thought just generally across the council, we will all recognise that things currently, such as our energy budgets, are incredibly volatile and uncertain again. And so moving forward, it's particularly difficult to predict exactly what that might cost over the course of the year. So just a quick flavour really of things that that hit within our directorate.
Thank you for that, Mark. Janine?
Yes, good morning, Chair. I think that in the main for Communities Directorate, where we are having issues is with tenders for the work that we're undertaking right across the Directorate, everything from highways, transportation, works to buildings themselves, capital projects. What we are finding in particular is when we go to tender, they are coming in significantly higher than expected. We've had examples recently of Pelican Crossings, where we were estimating an 88,000 budget. That's what we had to install, and they came in over 320,000. One tender was returned. It makes it incredibly difficult to conduct the service when that is so volatile. And the other piece is on very large capital projects. One that we're going out to tender for currently is Cozy Corner. We've got planning permission to undertake that work. Half of that is funded by Welsh Government. We've got a budget of about 2.2 million. But whether we receive any tenders at that level, Chair, we suspect they'll be significantly higher. So it's very difficult at this point to plan with such a volatile market. And sometimes we don't get any tender returns at all. So it's difficult to manage going forward.
Thank you for that, Janine. Mark, you've still got your hand up. Is that a legacy hand?
Chair, it was a legacy hand, but I actually have got one thing to add,
What?
actually, which is generic. One of the other challenges you've heard me and others talk about recently is our workforce challenges, and Claire picked up on some of that. One of the other challenges, in order to fill specific necessary roles in the council to carry out our statutory responsibilities, is that you will also see over time, for example, an increase in our agency costs and our need to commission people and services in order to ensure that we can carry out services and remain resilient. And again, you know, ideally that wouldn't be the case, but it's just probably worth mentioning that as well, that something will hit across the council. It'll be particularly acute in some areas, such as social care, but it is actually prevalent across the council. And I'll keep my hand this time.
Thank you. Lindsay, you're the last corporate director. Did you want to say anything?
Thanks, Chair. Really, it was covered by Janine and Claire. So Janine, with regard to capital pressures, clearly with the school modernisation programme, that's going to be a very similar thing. And with the demand-led nature that Claire referred to, of course, we've got exactly the same thing within recoupment. So there's out-of-county charges for additional learning needs. And also it could be related directly then to homeschool transport with additional pressures there. So again, I think most directorates, Chair, are feeling very similar pressures.
No problem. Councillor Alex Williams, did you want to come back on anything before I move on to other questions?
No, not on this particular point. I think that's given us a greater understanding of the budgetary pressures across all directorates. So thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Martin Jones, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's always disheartening to hear directors give updates in relation to budget pressures, and as councillors involved in scrutiny process, we could understand and perhaps accept where we are. But I pose the question: how can we reach out to the borough, to the ratepayer in the borough, and perhaps inform them better than what we're doing now, what these budget pressures are, what the cost is of providing services? As a local member, more often than not, council business is very much restricted to potholes and bin bags, when there is a far bigger picture involved here. And I just wonder whether or not we can review our communication with the county borough and just update them where their money is going, and perhaps that will go some way to not dampening what goes on in social media, but being better informed before you start criticising the authority. I hope I'm making some sense here, because I do think there is scope here to reach out to the county borough and just better inform people where their money is going.
Yeah, I think it's something we've discussed before, Councillor Jones, probably in this committee and in others as well. Mark, I assume it's on this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, to agree, I mean, that's a constant, really, isn't it? How do we better engage, and how do we get a better understanding of what the council does and some of the challenges it faces? One thing we are considering this year, I'm not 100% sure it's finalised, is trying to come up with something simpler in terms of an infographic, which potentially might go out with the council tax bills, or if not, be certainly available online and dealt with in a different way, which would set out in a much simpler way where your money goes. So there's an element in that of demonstrating that council tax isn't by any means the majority of the money that the council receives, but furthermore trying to get an understanding of where the bulk of the money is spent, for example, in schools or in social care. Now, there's a challenge in that, Chair, as I know you and other members will recognise, is that it doesn't follow necessarily that every member of the public will regard that as the right way of spending the money, particularly, of course, if you don't have children in school or you don't have relatives in care. But I do think there is something in what Councillor Jones said about getting a greater understanding where the bulk of the council's money goes. Rightly or wrongly, it isn't on potholes, it's on education and social care, and trying to get a broader understanding of the range of services that we run, where we spend our money, and where that money comes from. And I think that is something that's in hand. I'm sure it's not a silver bullet, but it is recognised that point does need to be addressed.
Thank you for that, Mark. Councillor Smith? No, hands gone.
Taking more attention to lowering my hand than opening my microphone. Okay. Yeah, I agree with what Mark has just said and what Councillor Jones said earlier. As an ex-teacher, I know that repetition is a good thing. We don't call it repetition in the teaching world, though. We call it reinforcement. And there are some messages you just need to reinforce over and over again, so that the messages go home. I think with the circulars that go out to council taxpayers, it would be very useful to once again insert some pie charts and things. It used to be done years ago. I don't know why this stopped, but the pie chart showing which part of the council pie goes on education, which part goes on social services, which part looks at parks and playing fields, and so on and so forth. That's always good visual information. I think the distinction between current and capital spending is also one that's worth getting out there as a message. And also trying to give people a simple grasp of the sheer magnitudes that we are spending. Is £50,000 a lot of money? What about £400 million, which is pretty much our current budget, isn't it? Which is somewhere between a third and a half of a billion. How big is a billion? Can we get the sort of scale out there to get a sort of sense of proportion amongst the public? And most important of all, what percentage of that budget is accounted for by the actual council tax? Sorry if you can hear my phone ringing in the background. Sorry, I can't stop it. It's the house phone. One of my servants will answer the phone, no doubt, in a minute. And I was at a conference, and somebody who really should have known better asked me what proportion of our council tax goes on schools, and I was able to answer, well, all of it, and a bit more as well, if you look at it that way. And that this person was the senior executive officer in some big business, and it came as a surprise to him. If he was wearing a hat, it would have flown off, because it hadn't occurred to him that our council tax didn't even pay for one of our major council services. So the more information we can put out that way and keep putting it out forever, because the message will never get home, the more we can do it, the better.
Thank you for that, Councillor Smith. And just for the avoidance of doubt, Councillor Smith does not have servants, just in case anyone was wondering at all. Councillor Alex Williams.
Just on that point, I think Councillor Smith is right, is that people in the public associate their council tax with the public realm, don't they? And that's the issue we face. I don't know whether anyone has anything else on the volatile budgets, but if they don't check, I can move on to my next point, and that was 4.1.15.
Yeah, Pushkin, go ahead.
It mentions that the council has taken proactive decisions during the 2020-21 year regarding the COVID-19 recovery fund. I just wondered whether we've done any work on quantifying the success of those measures which we took in that particular financial year.
Mark or Caris? No one seems to be moving forward. Janine.
Hello, Chair. I'll come in and see if I can answer some of this for you. I think what's important to note is that we had to make a real attempt at bolstering our business communities and the visitors into our town centres, etc. We knew that the pandemic was incredibly hard. So we did a full and comprehensive support package whereby we halved rents for market traders, we didn't charge fees for clubs, etc. In fact, we went a little bit further than that. We also did packages of support for things like guards, sneeze guards and signage. We did some online marketing as well. So we went over and above, I think, to try and do as much as we could to provide protection, as well as providing those reduced and free car park offers in Bridgend and in Porthcawl. Now, with regard to knowing how effective those measures have been, it's incredibly difficult because we are in a global pandemic and the support packages we put in place wouldn't necessarily in themselves prevent businesses from dissolving or stopping trading, because Welsh Government, of course, gave a significant number of business grants. They gave assistance with business rates, and we gave out, I think it was nearly £40 million during the COVID pandemic period. So whilst there's no doubt that our packages assisted, I think it's really difficult in isolation to see whether it was what our measures put in were successful and effective on their own, because it just wasn't Bridgend, it was Team Wales really, with Welsh Government and to some extent some of the decisions that central government made as well, Chair. But I know that we do have comments from sports clubs that were grateful we didn't levy fees. In particular, the traders in the town centre in Bridgend and Porthcawl were grateful for the reduction or the free car parking at the time to encourage people into those centres, as well as the businesses where we reduced the rates and the packages. You know, every little bit assisted. Whether we could see in isolation how effective ours were, I think that would be incredibly difficult to do.
Thank you for that, Janine. Councillor Alex Williams, did you want to come back before I bring in Mark and then Councillor Spanswick? Did you want to hear from
No, thanks,
Mark?
Chair. That's very helpful. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for that. Mark?
Yeah, apologies, Chair. I couldn't get my microphone on when you originally asked the question, so that was why I was mute. what I was going to say is some of what Janine said, but essentially, I think members will understand that effectively the baseline has changed, doesn't it? So we were in extraordinary circumstances with lockdowns and particular COVID rules, which meant that it is actually very difficult to establish specifically whether each of our individual measures had, an absolutely defined and measurable effect. I suppose what I would say is that we, like every other local authority, wanted to very quickly and very visibly demonstrate our support to local businesses and to town centres, and we did that from things like the rental holidays and the free car parking charges. I suppose the challenge moving forward is, my own personal view is that those kind of things are not sustainable on a long-term basis, and therefore what we need to do is obviously work with the other stakeholders, including the traders and including the sports clubs and the other people that Janine has mentioned, and come up with more sustainable recovery methodology moving forward, which will, for example, provide additional footfall in the town. So I think the question is valid from Councillor Williams, but I think you'll also understand that it was particularly difficult to measure specifically the impact, because you could argue, okay, well, maybe overall footfall didn't go up, but actually if we hadn't put the measure in, it would have gone down even more, or whatever the circumstances might have been. So I think it's justified on the basis that there was an expectancy with the funding that we would do something immediate and very visible, as I say, and tangible to help these groups. We did that, but I think they were particular measures to meet a particular circumstance, and therefore probably can't be measured in the same way as we would implement other initiatives in our normal business, if that makes sense.
Thank you for that, Mark. Right. Councillor Spanswick, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. On this point, the 4.1.15, I don't have the way I'm reading it, it's just an accuracy point, but it says about the balance of the fund have been carried into 21-22 to support the various free car parking, the phased rental income increase, and then it says the waiver of sports fees for the remainder of the 21 season. Should that mean the remainder of the 21-22 season?
Thank you. Mark, Jean?
Yes, I think it does accurately mean that. It means until the end of this financial year. Yes.
Great, thanks for that. Okay, thanks.
Thank you for that, Councillor Spanswick. A point of clarity there. Right then, has anyone got anything else on 4.1.15? Raise your little hand, and then we'll move on to page 17 in general. Nope. Right. Okay. For the rest of page 17, does anyone have any questions? Subheading estimated cost of the council's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and table 2. Councillor Alex Williams.
Yeah, me again, sorry. 4.1.17. Obviously, this report was written in January, I think. So I think it says that the free school meal panel, Welsh Government's free school meal panel, hadn't met until early in the new year. It's obviously now March. So have these been reviewed? And if so, what was the result?
Fabulous. Anyone? Lindsay? Karis? You both popped up.
No, my answer is not going to be particularly helpful, Chair, as I don't know is the answer. I'm not sure whether finance colleagues will be aware.
Karis?
I was going to say that we have had some of that money released since this report was written. As you say, there is a time lag, isn't there? So since this report was written, actually, we have had some of that money released now to us. So they have actually released 733,000 through to us in relation to that particular item.
Thank you for that. Councillor Williams, are you happy, or do you want to come back?
No, fantastic. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Okay. Has anyone else got anything on page 17? No. Nope. Right then, we'll move on to, oddly enough, page 18. Does anyone have anything on page 18? Okay, we'll move on. I don't know if I'm leaving too long enough for people to bring in or not, but page 19. We've got budget, environments and technical adjustments, pay, price, inflation. Councillor Alex Williams.
Just on 4.122, it just seems like a total waste of money that ICT have not been able to recover fixed costs of printers and photocopiers. I know it's only £150,000 in the broad scheme of things, as Councillor Smith said earlier on, but is it as a result of contractual arrangements, essentially, that we haven't been able to recover the costs?
Karis.
This is an internal recharge issue in that ordinarily the costs are picked up by the department. So when they do their printing, etc., those costs are sent back to ICT so that they can pay the contract. The issue has been, obviously, departments have not been printing, etc. Therefore, really, it's just a budget environment between the service accounts and ICT for the year.
Fabulous.
Great, thanks for the clarification.
Thank you for that. Does anyone else got anything on page 19? No. Okay. All right then. So we'll go to page 20, which has got budget reduction proposals, monitoring of budget reduction proposals, and prior year budget reductions. Are the subheadings? Anyone? Anyone? Anything at all? We didn't get this far in the pre-meeting, so I've got nothing written down. Councillor Alex Williams.
Yeah, final contribution from me on this report, you'll be pleased to hear. Can you remind me what the current position is that directors have identified for the specific purposes which they're going to use any underspends and how they're going to mitigate any overspends? I think on page 33 of the report, it says that earmarked reserves need to be spent on specific projects, but at some point within the report it says that these earmarked reserves are going to fund a wide range of programs within the capital program. Now, I don't have the capital program in front of me, unfortunately, but have directorates identified the specific purposes in which they're going to use these earmarked reserves? Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. We'll go Mark first.
Yeah, Karis may want to add to this, but I suppose, because I happen to know the process is ongoing, really. So what we've asked directors to do is to identify, first of all, any potentially earmarked reserves on a revenue basis, as you say, Councillor Williams, for a very specific purpose. So that might be where there is a particular piece of work that can happen over the next year, or a short-term post, perhaps, or something that is time limited and therefore doesn't become recurring expenditure. But additionally, there's the opportunity to move some of the underspend into the capital programme. And consequently, there are a whole range of capital bids. There is insufficient money to fund them all. But again, similarly, a process would need to be initially taken through Corporate Management Board. But clearly, the capital programme is something that would need to then be approved by Cabinet and then eventually by Council. And that wouldn't come. There isn't now a capital programme report until post-elections. That wouldn't come until the next opportunity in June or July. So essentially, it's an ongoing process. We haven't completed it yet, Councillor Williams.
Karis, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think Mark's outlined that, really. I think we outlined for you last week the process for capital, for instance. There is quite a lead time in that because the schemes need to be well planned. We need to be sure that we can deliver them, the timescales over which they've been delivered. And actually, the new factor we need to take into account now is what's already been mentioned at this meeting, which is around the increasing costs in a lot of that capital expenditure. So there is a fairly long lead time in relation to putting the capital bids forward.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Williams, are you happy with that response? Or
yes, thanks very much, both. Very kind. Thank you.
Yeah, but okay. Right then, I've just moved my mouse and I've lost the page. So we're on page 20. Is anyone got anything else on page 20 before I move on? No. Okay. We've then got page 21. Councillor Spanswick, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Page 21, 422. It's regards the outstanding prior budget reductions. That's the COM19, the street works. I'm assuming, I think it's correct in believing that's the permitting scheme, which has been on, well, I've lost track how many years it's been in the budget proposals, waiting for Welsh Government to decide what they're going to do with it. It hasn't come forward, and they're showing now it's £100,000 pressure. I thought originally was 50,000, but I might be wrong. It was now showing 100,000. But the worrying thing is, Welsh Government are not going to make a decision. I don't know when. But the highways net, it says in the narrative, the highways network budget area is committed to stay within budget throughout the implementation phase. So if Welsh Government don't make a decision, are not making a decision, that pressure is coming on other areas of the highways budget by us not progressing with the permitting scheme, which is not ideal. So either decide it's not going to happen and stop putting this pressure on the street works budget, I would say.
Thank you for that. Jean, yeah.
Yeah, Councillor Spanswick, you're spot on there. It is for the street permit scheme that we've been trying to introduce. It's something that's done regularly in England, where you issue permits to contractors when they come to work on the street, etc., and you put all of your conditions into that, so you don't have to continually inspect. And then we are the first local authority in Wales to ask Welsh Government to introduce it into Wales, and what it would enable us to do is to make a saving against those staff that go out and have to check on schemes, etc. So we're not getting any traction with it. It has been in for a number of years, and we do have this saving against that proposal. We do every year make sure that our highway network budget only spends what we have in place. So Jason Jenkins and the team are very good at staying within their agreed budget. And what we do is try to take this saving into account. So I think what we need to do is speak to our Welsh Government colleagues. If there is no appetite for the permitting scheme, I think Councillor Spanswick is probably right. We probably do need to look to withdraw this and save it in another way. Chair.
Thank you for that, Janine. Councillor Spanswick, did you want to come back?
I agree with that, Janine. We do need to either remove it and stop putting the pressure, because it's putting pressure and cuts on other parts of the highways budget. So we need to perhaps agree as a council that it's not realistic. It'd be great if Welsh Government would make. I don't know why the delay.
No,
but it's not
me, because
happening.
I mean, it would really assist all LAs in Wales if we did get this permitting scheme in. I mean, it's a very natural scheme that occurs in England. It would be an efficiency for the whole of Wales. But yeah, I think we need to very shortly draw a line under this one. We'll find out from colleagues where they are. And yeah, I think we probably need to draw a line if we can't get any traction.
Great, thanks, Janine. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks for that, Councillor Spanswick and Janine. Anyone got anything else on 21? No. Okie doke. Page 22. No. Page 23. Councillor Amanda Williams.
Great, thanks. Mine was on the support for learners with additional learning needs. Yeah. It says in the report that we're losing money because of the number of children who are in our borough going to our special needs schools. And I was a bit confused at this, because surely we'd want our special needs children to be schooled in our area rather than filling up the spaces from out of area. And I understand in the past that there was there were spaces, and so we made agreements to sell those spaces to other local authorities. But this report suggests that our special needs children have a value on them, and I didn't like the way it was potentially worded in the report to suggest that, because our children, like I said, should be able to go to the schools in our borough without there being a financial cost to that happening on a piece of paper. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams. Lindsay.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Williams is absolutely right. I've looked at this. We need to change the narrative on that. Because I think what we need to be saying is, as Councillor Williams has said, you know, we are keen to provide the best possible care and support for learners within the county borough. And one of the challenges is, of course, is that, and again, this is referenced in the paper, when we don't have places within our own schools to effectively provide to other local authorities, obviously it does come as a cost. But Councillor Williams is right. You know, we do need to make sure that narrative is clearer, and we'll endeavour to do that in the next report. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Lindsay. Councillor Amanda Williams, are you happy with the response?
Yes, thank you.
Fabulous. Okay, then. So if anyone else has anything on page 23, speak now. Nope. Okay. It's page 24 then. No. 25. 26. Children's social care, prevention and well-being subheadings. No, okie doke. Page 27, moving on to Communities Directorate. No, okay. Page 28, we've got street lighting, highway services, parking services, engineering services, parks, playing fields and bereavement services, and corporate landlord. No. We'll go to page 29, which is the Chief Exec's Directorate, Finance, HR and Organizational Development Partnerships. No, okay, and then on to 30, I think we've covered a bit of housing and homelessness, but if anyone has anything, bring it up. The legal, democratic, regulatory, ICT. Then we go to council-wide budgets on page 31. Councillor Spanswick.
Thank you, Chair. Page 31 is the capital financing part just below the chart. I'm trying to better understand this and the process for that decision, I suppose. The projected overspend of capital financing cost, which is gone from 7.3 million to 8.3 million, is due to utilising the budget in 21-22 to pay off historic prudential borrowing costs where feasible, which will have long-term revenue cost savings. So I'd like to understand the figures. What are the long-term cost savings based on that additional spend, and how that decision is right? Is that a council decision, or is that just decided on cost saving? It happens anyway. So trying to understand the figures and what are the savings and how that decision to do that is arrived at.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. Chief Exec O'Carris. Carris.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the rationale behind that is we're paying off some of our loan debt so that we don't have the debt charges coming through in future years. What I can't give you, Councillor Spanswick, I can't give it to you now, but I can provide it to you, is we've asked exactly what is that revenue saving. I don't have that figure to hand, but I can certainly get it for you, and I can distribute that to the committee members so that you've got that figure. And I must admit, I can't answer your question either with regards to how that decision is made. That's my lack of knowledge, I think, about how the council is operating. But again, I can certainly get you that information and let you know about that.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. Well, the question I was asking basically was the difference between spending that £1 million on a capital project, I don't know what, but something, versus what that revenue saving and the decision process being that.
This is the revenue budget. It's the money that we've got aside to finance our capital spending and our debt. So we'll have had an underspending this year. So we've been able to make if you like, a voluntary additional payment into our minimal revenue provision so that we reduce our long-term debt. So it's part of the underspend we're using, if you like, to offset some of our future debt costs. Does that make sense?
It does. It's just it's £1 million could have been spent on something else or pay off debt. And I suppose it's always best to pay off your debt. But then again, just posing the question.
Yeah.
What if?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Thank you, Karis, and we'll look forward to that extra information. Anyone else on page 31? No? Okay, so 32. Review of the earmarked reserves. We've covered it a little bit already. And the council tax reduction scheme. No, okay. So then 33, and then obviously 34 and 35. Is anyone else has anything? I'll take all three of that one go. Councillor Spanswick.
Yeah, 33 is just to try and understand this, if looking from a public point of view. So table 6 on 33, the way I read it, it's all the earmarked reserves. But I can't see anywhere in this page of the report the unallocated reserves, the 9 million. Because I know that we talked earlier about social media and the way people say, oh, there's £80 million. Why didn't the council do something with it? Well, it's clearly it's all allocated. But it's understanding the full picture. Where is the other bit which is unallocated, or have I missed that somewhere?
No, you're right. You're right, Councillor Spansic. This is just talking about our earmarked reserves. What it doesn't include is the council fund, which isn't. Yeah. So these are all of our earmarked reserves. Maybe we need to look at the content of that table and the way it's presented for future reports to make it clearer. Picking up on your point about the public reading these reports need to understand the figures.
Yeah, it does say excluding the council fund at the top.
Yeah.
I think it's over the some years we've had another line at the bottom, just adding in the unallocated to give that total picture. Useful, thank you.
Thank you for that. I think that's something that can be looked at in the future. Okay, so I've got no more on the main body of the report, so I am going to move to the appendices, but I'm going to take them Appendix 1, and then we'll just go through directorates rather than going EFS 1, EFS 2, because I think. So we'll go education and family support on Appendix 1. That's EFS 1 down to EFS 1, but there's, yeah, you know what I mean. Anyone? I think we've covered most of them already, but I just don't want members to think we're skipping anything. No, okay, so we'll go to social services and wellbeing, SSW 19, SSW 20, and SSW 27. No, okay. And then communities on Appendix A, COM 19, COM 4, COM 26, COM 52, COM 55, COM 26, COM 51, COM 55, and COM 96. No. Either no one can hear me or we have no questions. So we'll go to Appendix 2, which monitoring of the 2021-22 budget reductions. Again, we'll take education. That we've covered some of these already, but no, okay. Social services and wellbeing, SSW 1, SSW 2. Okay. Communities. John, Council Spanswick, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Shane. It wouldn't be an ordinary day if I didn't find something on the CAT process. COM 1, which I understand, it's green. Well, it should be green, I'm not sure, but the bottom part of the narrative says the level of funding will also dictate the standard of green space maintenance and may result in a further reduction of grass cut areas if the proposed savings are not forthcoming through the asset transfer process. So I'm not sure if that's the right way to go about things. We're saying, well, if we can't achieve this, we're going to reduce standards, whereas we should be setting standards perhaps and setting the budget accordingly for a standard that we require for how our borough looks, especially our gateway areas. So it's a comment more than anything. I'm just not sure if that's the right way to look at things. We should be setting standards for our borough to stand out and then allocate budget accordingly, not vice versa.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Spanswick. I think the first thing to say is that we have achieved the saving via CAT, so that's great. And we've got a lot of interest in the CAT process over the next year, so we know we're very confident we'll be able to achieve this saving again. So I don't think it will come to the point where we will have to look at other areas at this point, such as the open space maintenance. And I think there's some things that are quite important here going forward is we want to do a fundamental review of this. And one of the things we want to do, Councillor Spanswick, and I think we have spoken about it previously, is to look at mow and no mow areas in order to look at improving biodiversity and contributing to our 2030 agenda. What we are intending to do is to bring in another biodiversity officer into the team. They're going to look at a number of things, including invasive species, because that's something that we need to look more closely at and be more proactive. And as part of that, we want to identify within our borough those mow and no mow areas and look at what the standards are for areas that we're going to maintain. So as part of that, I think we will have a more robust narrative on how we maintain our open spaces going forward. But just to assure you, we haven't reduced any standards on cut to achieve this saving. This saving has been achieved fully from the community asset transfer process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ginny. I agree. I'm not going to reverse the arguments of the cat and the 300,000. That's it is what it is. But at the moment, there's a culture change desperately needed, because I've gone on for years and years. There's areas, massive areas, you approach Westwood Community Centre. We spend, I don't know how much, cutting this embankment, which could be a lovely no more area, wildflowers. There's several in Brackla I've raised over the years. It needs a culture change because people are not listening. But it can be done, should be done. But it does need a complete review of how we're maintaining our open spaces for biodiversity.
Yeah, that's our intention. So yeah, absolutely. And we'd welcome your comments on that when we get a proposal together.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe something that could come to scrutiny in the future as well. Yeah. Councillor Smith and Councillor Baldwin have got their hands up. So I'll go Councillor Smith first.
Yeah, Councillor Spanswick mentioned the grassy bank by the Westwood Community Centre. He'd be very welcome to come along there with a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand tree saplings and plant them all over that bank. I'm sure local ward members would welcome that. In fact, the Nant Kevin Glass, which flows beneath that bank, in Llalliston Community Council, we've got an ambition to turn that into a linear local park linking up with Craiger Park at Ogmore. So yeah, as long as it's done properly and as long as the community is kept informed of what's happening, I think mowing that grass isn't the right thing to do, and we do need a proper ecological plan for that site. Sorry to go on about one little patch, but it's the words Westwood Community Centre. My little ears prick up and I have to say something. Sorry.
No, I think we're all in the same boat there, Councillor Smith, especially local members anyway. Councillor Baldwin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to say anything more than the fact that rather than go too much in this meeting, is something that would come to Scrutiny 3 in the future, and this is the review of grass cutting is something that we should be bringing forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baldwin. Okay, is anyone? Thank you both for that. I'm assuming you both can take your hands down in a sec. Okay, has anyone got anything else on communities? Councillor Smith, you still got your hand up. I'm assuming it's the legacy. Thank you.
I am incredibly sorry. I don't know how it went down then. I didn't make it go down. It went down by itself. It's magic.
It's magic, yeah. Okay. No other members got any questions on communities part of this Appendix B? Okay, so we'll go to the Chief Execs. And Corporate and Council wide. Anyone has any questions? Nope, okay. So we will go to Appendix 3 or Appendix C, as I seem to have renamed them all. Revenue budget monitoring to the 31st December 2021. Anyone have any questions at all on this appendix? No? All right then. So unless I have missed anything, and I'm sure Meryl or Lucy will tell me momentarily, I will bring that item to a close. No, I'm not being told otherwise, so I don't think I missed anything. So thank you all those for that. And then we'll move on to agenda item 5, which is employee well-being. So there's a few names to this report. Kelly?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to spend time going through the report. I think members have all had the opportunity to read it. It's a comprehensive report that's been put together by Deborah and her team. What I would like, Chair, with your agreement, is if Anne Stewart, our new Health and Wellbeing Officer, could perhaps just take a couple of moments to introduce herself and some of the initiatives that she's introduced. And then obviously myself, Deborah, Angela and Anne are more than welcome to ask us any questions and any issues you want us to clarify. So if I could pass over to Anne, who could perhaps give a little introduction because she is new to the authority.
No worries, thank you, Kelly. Welcome, Anne, and whenever you're ready, carry on.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. Basically, I joined the authority in August 2021, and that was following recommendations from an A2 report that health and wellbeing needed to really be a bit more cohesive within the authority, that lots of people were doing things, but it was nice to have somebody to head it up, I suppose, and promote the resources that you do have within the authority to support your staff. And I have to say I was really impressed by the resources that you do have and the learning and development that you have to support your employees and your checklists and things. So really well done. And I'm very much for positivity in my roles. So I very rarely have anything bad to say about anybody. So whenever I came to the authority, I had come from an occupational health background in the last 10 years and also have a diploma in mental health and wellbeing coaching. So I felt that this role very much suited the skills and knowledge that I have to date with 40 years experience in the health service. I really started to familiarise myself with how the authority works and reviewed policy and procedure and have made a few changes along the way with regards to some of the procedures. And really the aim for that was to support the managers with sickness absence. And again, positivity, I'd like that to be changed to sickness attendance. I think attendance is better than absence. So again, that's an ongoing review with the absence policy at the moment. I've been involved with the HR department with their surgeries and managing absence, and have looked at introducing more guidance for the stress risk assessment. And that should help managers as well with the difficult conversations they're having in order to get those who are off sick with stress back to the workplace with reasonable adjustments in place to assist the teams get a better hold on things. Also, musculoskeletal injuries and issues are another area that we're looking at. So I'm engaging with currently Halo Leisure, and we're looking at the Halo at Home app as a pilot study for my newly formed health and wellbeing group. So we had our inaugural meeting yesterday. We had 20 people very interested over the different directorates, and 14 were able to attend yesterday. I believe with elections and things going on within the authority that there are lots of people who did want to be there but couldn't because of work pressures, and that's always going to be the case. However, we had a very positive meeting yesterday and lots of ideas have come forward as to what people would like to do with this group. And it's not my group, it's the authority's group, and we're really hoping to promote health and wellbeing and perhaps cover, I think we'd like to walk before we run, so maybe 4 initiatives in the year, and we will use the communication of the intranet, bridge enders, posters and one-to-one communication with the teams that are out there in the directorates. I'm trying to look at how we can develop the intranet tile so that we can collate all the health and wellbeing resources under one tile, so that it'll be I suppose, easier access for everybody, and they'll go to one specific tile and access the resources there. I was very impressed by the CEO wanting to introduce himself whenever you were a new member of staff. Thought that was fantastic in promoting the caring culture that BCBC provide. And I think that engagement very early on in promoting what health and wellbeing resources you have within the authority is very welcome. And I've actually even done a strap line for recruitment, because I think it's important now. Pay isn't always the issue. When somebody's looking for a job, it's actually the services that support you in the workplace. So I think health and wellbeing should be there. I've also engaged with Healthy Work in Wales, PSB, InSync and Care First. I'm looking at the EAP programme. We do have a lot of quantity data, however, we don't seem to have a lot of quality data, and that would be something that I would like more information on. You know, are the services InSync and Care First providing what I feel they should be providing for the employees? Do the employees feel that these are good benefits? And is there anything that we could do to support that? I've also undertaken some bespoke work. I was asked to attend the Rapid Review Response meeting in Porthcawl to support employees following the incidents within the authority, and found that really quite eye-opening, and it was a privilege to be there. And next week I'm going down to the depots, and I'm going to be doing some work with 42 members in the Cleaner Streets division. And really that was because the manager realised that they'd had some difficult issues to deal with, and they wanted someone who would encourage them to engage with health and wellbeing resources. So I'm not going down to take away from learning and development. I'm going down to support these people as individuals, and hope that they'll come forward to me, given my background in mental health and wellbeing coaching and my background as a nurse and occupational health advisor, that they might feel that they could open up to me. So I'm hoping that goes positively, and I'll certainly feed back to you on that. I report into Ange Farrow and Deborah Beek, and we have an action plan in place, and I'm trying to address the majority of the recommendations that Ava made in her A2 report. Some of the things we will get quick wins on, and other things will take a lot longer, obviously, to provide. So I hope I haven't spoken too quickly or gone on too long. Thank you.
No, thank you for that, Anne. That was brilliant. I hope your time with the authority is a long and fruitful one with this. Right, I have a couple of questions on the report, so we'll kick straight into it, and then feel free to come in, and Deb, Kelly, whomever, cabinet members. So I've got Councillor John Spanswick first.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome, Anne. I think Anne's a breath of fresh air, because I did see her in a previous meeting with the PSB sub-board, and there was some discussion then about reaching out to those people not office-based, which is great to see as well. And as Anne just said, then it is starting to happen to go to the depots, because we have a lot of workforce isolated on their own, working out in depots, who perhaps don't always get the support because they haven't got access to a computer, and they're not office-based. So there's some great steps moving forward in that respect. What this report, it doesn't cover, but it's sort of been discussed in the past, is it was our, sorry, it's not sickness attendance, no, sickness attendant, but it was possibly a flaw of the data, but it came out over the last year or so that non-work related absence linked to stress for some reason was higher, and quite a lot higher, in wellbeing and education directives, but I think mainly wellbeing. And we still haven't got the bottom of that, whether that's a data input problem, or is there something non-work related which applies more to one directorate, which is hard, because you think non-work related should be relatively spread out across the board equally, or fairly equally. But there was a problem there which didn't seem to be working. The bit that's only come out yesterday, whether this could be part of this report in the future and thoughts for the future, was the Sophia, the Wellbeing Commissioner, has published a report, A Future Fit for Wales, a roadmap to a shorter working week. And they're looking for pilots to trial in the public sector, because apparently 76% of the Welsh public will support the sharing out of work so everyone can achieve a positive work-life balance, with 57% of the population supporting Welsh Government-backed schemes to move towards a 4-day working week. Wouldn't we all have a 4-day work week? And maybe that's something that this report is a start, that could be the start of, and maybe Bridgen, County Borough could be the start of a pilot to look at what Welsh Government and Sophia, the Future Generation Commissioner, is promoting. So be interested to hear people's thoughts on that and whether that's something that for the future.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Spencer. It is definitely something that seems to be out there at the moment, being discussed. I've got Deb and Councillor Gebby, so who wants to go first? Deb?
Sorry, Chair, I just wanted to know if you wanted me to respond to Councillor Spanswick's comments there.
Yeah, no, go ahead, yeah. And then
Right.
I'll bring in Councillor Gebby, who can see is happy.
Sorry, Councillor Gebby. Yeah. Oh, okay. In terms of, the focus, as far as I was concerned for this report, was around well-being and the actions that we are doing. And yes, that came from a previous report, didn't it, where we were looking at absences across the council, and as a direct recommendation from this committee, we started recording that information differently and took it back to the beginning of the year, so where we were able to show according to how people were reporting their absences, whether they were if they were stress related, if it was work related stress or not. There was reference there to Councillor Spanswick asked about data input. We're quite confident that the information has been put in correctly. Partly, it hadn't all been done by directorates immediately. It's been done part in HR and part elsewhere. So we've got mechanisms to check that that's the case. So we don't think it's a data input. I suppose without the graphs in front of me, and I can come back and give further comment outside committee on this. The two areas identified are clearly the two larger areas of workforce. So whether it was, the figures were looked at in terms of numbers of days or percentages. So we can go away, have a look at it. I'm confident the information is correct, but clearly we have to record on our system the information that's provided by employees when they report absence. It's not for us to challenge that information. So hopefully that helps. In terms of the report from the Commissioner on a reduced working week, clearly that's talking about people not losing pay. So in effect, the hourly rate increasing, and I seem to think that that's going to be subject to some discussions at the next PSB meeting. So it is quite early, only recently released, so no doubt there'll be more to follow on that front. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Gebby.
Thank you very much, Chair. I don't think I'd try and intervene in any data related conversation. However, I am interested in Councillor Spanswick's comments about a 4-day working week, and politically I would agree with him. I think it would give us opportunities to further develop specific workforces. I think the conversation that needs to be had, though, is how we do that without reducing anybody's pay, because I'm very conscious and cognizant of the fact that that is part of the ambition and aims of Welsh Government. It's not just reducing to a 4-day week, it's actually reducing to a 4-day week without any loss of pay. So essentially, the 10 years of austerity, all our members of staff would benefit because they wouldn't have lost out anymore. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Gebby. A very important point there when thinking about changing the working week. Okay. Don't think anyone else wants to come in on Councillor Spanswick's point, and maybe something we can look at in the recommendations. But I'm going to go to Councillor Alex Williams, who brought up questions from in the pre-meeting.
Thanks very much, Chair, and I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Anne on behalf of the Independent Alliance Group as well. Thank you very much for your report. Just referring to page 47, 4.6 and 4.7. the staff survey just struck me and other colleagues as well with that there's a certain disengagement with the organisation from some of our staff, and not exactly a lot of enthusiasm from our employees, with only 14% saying that they would want to be part of the staff network group. So I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about how you're going to address the disengagement with the organisation, because obviously the principle of working as one council, we want to ensure that our employees are all driving us forward with that vision. And also, you mentioned in the report as well about the learning and development programme and the workshops which have been undertaken. You mentioned in Appendix 1 of the report the percentages of how many people within the organisation thought the workshops and programmes were excellent or good. I'd be interested in hearing more about how many people actually took part in terms of numbers rather than percentages. Thanks very much.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Deb.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Williams in terms of, we have to continue to do all we can to ensure that staff are, feel that they are able to engage with the authority and respond in a whole range of ways, through local management arrangements, staff surveys, through trade union colleagues. That is important, and we continue to work on that. The staff survey has been the feedback report has been considered by a heads of service group that I'm part of, and we've developed an action plan there. One of our actions being to consider ways of continuing to engage with the workforce. It is 14% happy to be engaged, and that is quite a number actually when you look at the numbers of responses. But it's important now that we progress with that, and I think there is a carers network that Angela and Anne are going to help support as well. That is due to be launched quite shortly, and I think the lessons that Anne will have learned from developing the corporate wellbeing group will be put to good effect there. Engagement. In terms of the learning and development, we can certainly provide that information at a later date. I haven't got it at my fingertips today. Thanks.
No worries. Thank you for that. Councillor Williams, are you happy with that, or do you want to come back on anything for?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you. Okay, I have no more questionnaires or scrutineers from the pre-meeting. Does anyone have any questions on the wellbeing report? I'm not going to go through page by page. Councillor Amanda Williams.
Thanks very much. I'm just finding the section. It was on the last page of the report, and it was on about care first usage. I just wanted some clarification, because the first table says suggests that it says the information below captures care first usage between April 2021 and December 2021, suggests it was higher, substantially higher in Q1 than in Q2 and Q3, and that the figures drop. But then the second table suggests that the new clients have significantly increased in Q3. So I wondered why, if you see that the usage seems lower, but the new clients by directorate seems to have been substantially higher in Q3 than the other two. Thanks.
A bit of clarity there, Deb.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I'll attempt to respond to this, but Angela may need to help me if I get stuck. I think the two are different views of what is happening. The first table talks about the number of sessions, but they could be for the same person. They're not necessarily, they could be new contacts, somebody who's contacted their service for the first time. It could be a second or subsequent contact, somebody who's already been involved in the service. It's just something that they've always reported on in terms of how many new people have accessed their service during that reporting period. Sorry, that's the last photograph the client's by directorate, whereas the first one is the nature of the contact, which could be more than one. Yeah.
Okay. I get it. Councillor Amanda Williams?
Yeah, that's great, thanks, because I was taking it as each contact was one person contact. Thanks.
No worries, fabulous, thank you. Does any other members have anything on this before we go to recommendations? No, okay, that's fabulous, thank you. Okay, so that is the end of our business in today. So before we go to recommendations, thank you officers and cabinet members for coming today. Hope you found it interesting and fruitful discussion, and I'll see you all again no doubt soon.
Thank you, Chair. Bye bye, everybody.
Councillor Patel, you staying with us? I don't know. Right, so we'll go to recommendations then. I think we had a couple coming through there. All right there, Meryl, we managed to...
Oh, sorry, Chair, my second screen just flickered then for a moment.
I know mine's been playing up today. I'm trying to flick between the two, and it's been a bit of mare this morning. Go on.
Okay, so I can go through some of the points I've picked up, and perhaps the committee can decide if they want to make a recommendation on those, and then if there are any others the committee wants to make as well. So obviously there were a number of points raised and questions answered that may have satisfied the committee, and you won't want to make recommendations on them. So the first point was the timing of this report, raised by Councillor Williams and followed up by Councillor Jones and Spanswick, about having the information timely, and I think there was a point about having it perhaps before it comes to scrutiny pre-cabinet, so that the views and comments can be passed back to cabinet with the report when they see it, so that would make it earlier still. Is that a recommendation from the committee?
I think so. What do members feel? I think it's something definitely they could look at for the new chairs to have a look at, see if they can get it a little bit more relevant. I think I'm going to go Councillor Spanswick first.
Thank you, Chair. We need to make the recommendation clear, I think, but I sensed a little bit of what about it? Well, we might be able to do it, but we're not sure how easy that is. Both of Mark Shepherd and Caris. But I can't see why we can't do it, because at May AGM, the dates for meetings are set for the year. If we work backwards to when the period 1 will be ready, well, period 2, the cabinet dates, the scrutiny, there's going to be a relatively simple way of doing it, but it's having the will to do it. So I think we need, perhaps the recommendation needs to say that, because time is ticking, it needs to be built into the calendar meetings to be agreed at the May AGM.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
And there is finance and performance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Councillor Amanda Williams.
I was going to say similar, and I agree, and particularly as this report was, it suggested, was completed in January, and we're now March. So if the report was available, the information was available, why can't we have it shared with us earlier?
Yeah, no, that seems fair enough. And Councillor Alex Williams.
Yeah, Chair, just want to reiterate what Amanda and John have said. Basically, there did seem to be some scepticism, didn't there, from both Caris and Mark about whether there's enough time to release the information. But given the fact that this report had gone to Cabinet in January, it was very clear that the information in the report was from January. Then there's no reason why they can't release the information which they actually do have and can put together for scrutiny by COSC. So I think that should certainly be a recommendation for the AGM for the next term.
Yeah, definitely. So
And
I
just-
central.
And
Sorry,
just to be
Mel.
clear, we're not just saying about having the information earlier. The committee is asking for the reports before Cabinet so that the recommendations can be fed back into Cabinet. Yeah.
I've got a little thumbs up from Alex, so I'm going to take that. Any dissension before we move on? Don't want to be seen as dictating them again. No, okay. I think that one's fine there, Meryl. Any others from members or any other
So, Chair,
recommendations?
the next point was on home to school transport budget pressures. I'm not sure. There were a number of answers given to those points, and whether members want to make a recommendation on that point, perhaps they could speak now.
Yeah, Amanda.
Yeah, Lindsay agreed that he'd look into certain areas and feedback to her. So we need to somehow include that we'll have a feedback on issues that have been raised on specific areas, like the new builds.
Certainly. As long as the members are all in agreement, that's fine. Thanks.
Councillor Spanswick.
Yeah, I think I accept what Lindsay and Councillor Smith said about the catchment areas, you know, unintended consequences, planning for future and the LDP. But we are currently suffering from failure to perhaps appropriately plan the last LDP for housing. So that's not an excuse not to review the catchment areas. And I'm not sure. I do wonder how much work has actually gone on behind the scenes to review catchment areas, because I've been asking for the last probably 10 or 15 years the parts of Bracklow which are in the catchment area of Pencode, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I think we should be perhaps part of the regulation ask for a timeline of what work has been done. You know, so as a timeline on reviewing catchment areas. It may not be feasible to do it, but I'd just like to know what work has been done, what timeline, how is it done, and when could it be sort of something to get our teeth into, and whether that's a scrutiny subject for the future or not. But I'd like to see something in paper. I've never seen anything in black and white for a long, long time about catchment areas, what work's been done and what's planned.
Okay. Amanda, do you want to come back?
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with that and say that obviously I've only been chasing for almost 5 years. But at the start in 2017, I was told that they were looking at a review and it would take about 2 years, but they haven't even started looking at that review. So we do need some timelines, because when you look at Park Derwin, I'll give you an example. They didn't look at the catchment areas before with the planning. And there are some streets now where the front garden is in Coity catchment, the back garden is in Litchard catchment, because when they build houses in fields, the catchments quite often run through fields because they're not streets. And so it's caused no end of problems. Likewise, the development Gertha Casteth, there are some whose front bedroom is within what is now the Coitchurch catchment, to deal with the fact that Coity isn't big enough for all those children. But the back bedroom is in the area of Bracklow that is Coity catchment. So so they sort of looked at it for Gertha Casteth and Tremor Casteth by putting in, well, we'll have to move these children to Coitchurch because we're not going to get them all into Coity. But again, forgot about the fact they were building in fields, and there's no, you know, that catchment lines run through fields. So it does need to be looked at, and it does need to be looked at urgently, because when we talk about the Pencoed issue, there's all those houses that are going to be built down in Pencoed that won't be in our local authority, but they will be utilising Pencoed School. And so all of these children won't be getting in. So you might get the odd child will be accepted from BCBC, from Pencoed, from Coity or Brackler, and then they'll be required to put a bus on for the odd, or taxi the odd child, when they could be resolving it now. The head teacher, for example, of Bryn Teg is totally on board and is adamant he has the space to take these children into the Bryn Teg catchment. So I think we need it on paper, and we need to keep pushing for something to be done. Thanks.
Yeah, completely agree.
Okay, I've got that. Thanks.
Got that. Fabulous. And what was the next point?
The next couple of points there were Councillor Williams about Alex
Sorry,
Williams.
sorry guys.
Yeah, so go on. Sorry, you didn't see it.
Apologies, Meryl. Just on the point which has just been made, we've rehearsed this with Lindsay before, though, haven't we? And he's reticent to review anything to do with home to school transport until such time as the Welsh Government have published their review or their report, rather, into distances for home to school transport. So I think they're just going to come back to us and say that until such time as that report is published, then there won't be any review of catchment areas or anything to do with home to school transport. So that just needs to be borne in mind when setting these recommendations.
No, absolutely, Alex. I think there's no reason why they can't start looking.
Yeah, sure.
In that plan, I think that's the point we got to be making there. So we're ready to go for when that review comes forward, whenever it comes. Ross, welcome, Ross.
Thanks, Councillor Brindle. Sorry I haven't said much today. I'm nursing a very poorly dog who had a special operation yesterday. That's all I'll say. So he's sleeping on my lap as we speak. I think there's potential here for the committee, if the committee is so minded, to actually write to Welsh Government to ask them about this review. I've written in a personal capacity, and it falls under Lee Waters' portfolio. And the response I had back was, put in politely, 2 pages of absolute waffle. There seems to be a suggestion that they're going to take the 5-year term to come to a conclusion on the 1.5, the 2 miles and the 3 miles. I don't think that's acceptable. I think people need clarity on that. So I think there is the potential for this committee, and if we are of a view, I certainly am, and I'm getting the impression that other members are, that we write as a committee to seek clarification and to push Welsh Government to come to a conclusion on it, because as you can imagine, lots of councillors, backbench members, all of us probably are receiving quite anxious correspondence from constituents, parents, grandparents with regards to the current mileage setup. So clarity one way or the other. People are not going to be happy with a certain outcome, but one way or the other, I think we do need clarity. Thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Ross. Yeah, I think we can add that into the recommendation. Meryl, is that okay? As long as members are fine with that.
Yeah, consensus I was asking for, yeah.
Any dissension? Happy? I'm not hearing any dissension, so we'll put that in.
I'm just wondering, is it more appropriate for the council as a whole to be writing and pushing it from the leader point of view, or through Welsh WLGA?
I feel, wasn't this, Meryl, you might have to help me out. Wasn't this a recommendation? I feel like we've recommended this in another committee.
I think there's something similar from the budget process, wasn't there, Chair?
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean you can't make a recommendation.
No, I think we should do it again, and we can do it as is. I think we have made the the leader should do it in the budget. So there's no reason why this committee can't. I'd say, okay, we'll have to be the one who signs the letter, but I'm sure I'd be happy with that.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you're still, as Councillor Spanswick requested, if you're now moving towards making a recommendation that the council writes to.
Amanda?
I can't see why we can't do both.
Yeah. 2
letters, recommend that the leader does, and we also support it with a letter, because the more of us that do it, like Ross said, he's done it personally. The more of us that do it, surely then the more they've got to sit up and listen.
Yeah.
Yeah, agree with that.
Happy with both then? Any dissension?
Happy.
Okay. Meryl, next point you have?
Sorry, I was just going to say then that there were a couple of questions and answers to Councillor Williams' points on the next couple were budget growth on homelessness, which he had answers to, and the earmarked reserves. So I don't think there were particularly recommendations there, unless members think otherwise. Then we go on to the demand.
Sorry, Meryl. Just on homelessness, there is a concern that I have, though, in that, and of course, Councillor Patel mentioned that it's a very difficult situation to quantify, isn't it? How whether the budget's going to be sufficient or not, because obviously we don't know how many people are going to actually present as homeless during the financial year. But it'd be useful to gain some kind of estimation or projection to ensure that we have some more feel for exactly whether the budget is going to be sufficient, because this is going to be, as has been admitted on several occasions, a significant budget pressure going forward. So I don't know whether members feel that there's any merit in actually doing more work on actually trying to nail down the projections on this based on previous demand and estimating it going forward to ensure that we have sufficient funds in place to be able to tackle this very important issue.
Just going to bring that to the committee now. Is everyone just trying to think? Oh, we could put that in. Ask for more detail on it. Is that what we think we should be asking for? I'm just.
Okay, if I may, I would suggest we'll transcribe this now and come back to you after the meeting with the draft recommendations for the members present to comment on.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that, Meryl. The only one if everyone's happy with that, the only one I can think about when moving on to unallocated reserves was that a part of the table, and Councillor Spansbury and Cara said a word about that, and that was going to be something that was going to do for next time. So just making sure that we have that in.
Yes, that was the unallocated reserve. It's not included in the earmarked reserves, if you like, so as it was previously. So make a recommendation for that to be included.
Okay. Does any member have anything else then?
Then there was, sorry,
I'm just gonna. Sorry,
there was Councillor Martin Jones, who's no longer with us for the meeting here now, about how we can reach out to the ratepayer and review communication with the county borough, update it to be better informed. There are a number of points made there, so don't know if there's a recommendation there from the committee.
Mark said there was a plan in place to do something, so maybe it's asking for greater detail on that and to feed back to the committee so we're all understanding on that. But I am going to go to members before. John and Amanda. Amanda, is yours on this point or is it a separate point?
Mine was a separate point when you asked, have we got anything else to raise?
I thought it was.
Because Meryl might have my point anyway if she hasn't finished.
I'll go to John then first, and then I'll come back to you, Amanda. John?
Yeah, I was on the point with the council explaining to the public, because Councillor Smith said about putting the pie chart back into the sort of council tax letters go out. I thought it has been in the past. Maybe we should be putting a recommendation that we to put a nice simple graphic in the council tax demands showing where the budget goes and how that relates to the council tax. That may already be in the pipeline, but if we could put it as a recommendation as well, it just gives it a bit more.
Ross has got his little thumb up there, so I think that's fine. Is everyone happy without any dissension on that? No? Okay. Amanda, your point?
Mine was the wording of the funding of the special needs places, and Lindsay was going to review that and change the wording for the next report. So my recommendation would be that it's looked at for the next report, so that it's worded in a nicer way.
This was about the ALN not having surplus places and the wording of the narrative,
Yeah, because it suggested that it was a bad thing that we'd filled our schools with our children because we were losing money because of it, but that's not the case.
No. Okay, I think that's a fair one. Really. All right, Meryl.
Yeah, Sorry, just going.
No, that's
scrolling
fine.
through. Just I'm scrolling up and down, so let me just get back to where we were then. Sorry. Just going through the few of the questions and answers. The Councillor Spanswick picked up the date was wrong for the funding of sports fees. So don't know if you want to make a recommendation on that, if you're happy with it.
Just in the final report, we change it.
Yeah.
So it's accurate. I think that seems sensible. I think both of them were going to go away and do that anyway.
Just accuracy, Chair.
Then we've got Councillor Williams and the school meal money has been released since the report was written, and the fixed cost of photocopiers and the environment, so nothing there unless he thinks otherwise. Then there was the underspends and overspends, wasn't it, on the capital programme, and officers said that was ongoing. Then there was sorry, Janine and Councillor Spanswick about the permitting scheme and whether you want to make a recommendation that they go back to Welsh Government, and if it's not an appetite, we throw it. Councillor Spanswick's hand is up. So
yeah, Councillor Spanswick.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's been on the cards for years. Just doesn't seem to be happening. But I think the recommendation should be around the way that if we're going to take it out or accept that it's not going to happen, it'd be great if it could happen. But I sense that Janine was saying if we take it out, they'll look for savings elsewhere. I think it should be taken out, but not a cut of £100,000 from the community's budget. It should be accepted, the fact that it's not happening and that efficiency is removed, but not expecting the community's director to find that saving elsewhere. It's just a permanent reduction, or increase in the revenue budget, whichever you look at it. Not to expect that, because they've had severe cuts over the years, more than the directorate. I go on about it all the time. So I think I would like to propose that recommendation is removed, but the budget saving does not have to be found from elsewhere within the community's directorate.
Yeah, it seems a little unfair making them make another cut because they can't do something because Welsh Government. So that seems sensible to me. But what do other members think? Are we happy with that as a recommendation? And
there were two parts to that, wasn't there? They were going to go back and check the Welsh Government first for the appetite. Yeah.
I'm not hearing any dissension on putting that in.
No, fine.
No, brilliant. Okay. So
the next point is Councillor Amanda Williams has already raised the ALN need to change the narrative, which Lindsay agreed. So we'll flag that up there as well as a recommendation if members are happy. There was a question from Councillor Spanswick on the council-wide capital financing and and to understand the cost savings and how the decision was arrived at. Caris agreed to provide the information, so we'll just catch that up in the recommendations as well, so it's not forgotten. And the next. No, that's okay. We've got the earmarked reserves then. Oh, and then we go on to CAT, and we and there was a response to Councillor Spanswick's comments on the CAT saving and the narrative with about the mow and no mow areas, and whether you wanted to make a recommendation on that that be looked at and it'll also come to a future scrutiny 3 for consideration of the work programme for the new administration.
I think so. John, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Mera's just captured it though. Yeah, I think it's making it clear that we can put it perhaps for a future scrutiny topic to make sure that it doesn't hang around for a long time, and there is a real good discussion and report on future grass cutting, biodiversity, the whole ambit, and that it's dealt with by scrutiny, as well as making a recommendation perhaps that I don't know about the words, but there needs to be a culture change in the operation within BCBC when it comes to the park section. It doesn't sound too good, but it does need to happen.
Yeah.
It's stuck in a time warp.
Okay, well, we'll draft that up and circle it to you. I think it's 4-5 now, isn't it, left? So, and Councillor Jones was here earlier. I haven't got any other points highlighted unless I've missed anything or members wish to make any other recommendations on the first report.
No, I haven't got anything. Anyone else?
No.
See, we can have a. Sorry, Amanda.
So
No,
on the
I don't
second.
have anything.
No, but
On the
obviously we can have a
second
read through these if there's anything later.
Yes.
Yeah.
On the second report then on employee wellbeing, again, number of questions. Just one moment. There was the 4-day working week. Sorry, the disproportionate non-work related stress, and there was the PSB report yesterday, the pilot for the 4-day working week, and there was some answers given to those. Whether there's a recommendation in there from the committee.
I think it's. Go on, John.
It is early days. It's the report from Sophie Howe, the Future Generations Commissioner. So I'm presuming the PSB will be discussing it. But it's no harm in, perhaps from a scrutiny point of view, with the well-being, to recommend that BCBC consider being part of a pilot project in the future. But there will be costs. I think the report estimates for maybe £1 billion in Wales to implement. You have to stop people, to keep people's pay. Well, the pay rates will increase to have the same pay over 4 days. But why not get in there early days and put Bridgend up there as a marker that maybe could be interested in exploring possibilities of pilot.
I'm happy to have that as a recommendation. Other members?
Yeah.
Amanda's yes. Ross has got his little thumb up.
Then I've got the percentages of the people that took place and the numbers. So that's the information that was requested and will be brought back. We can include that in the listed requested information in the recommendations. Then there was the care first usage tables, which I think was explained. So I'm not sure there's another recommendation there. Just over to members, really, if you have any other recommendations.
Yeah, members. I think everyone's happy, or at least everyone's silent. Oh, no, there we are. John?
I'm happy. I just wonder if it's worth putting a positive Anne, who's started in August.
Yeah. I've
noticed there's a positive change in dealing with the non-office based staff and getting out there into the workforce. So whether it's just a line to welcome at or look forward to the future development, is some good sort of work going on there now.
I think all members welcomed the change and, like you say, the positive change and the approach to getting out into not just office-based staff then.
Yeah, they're doing what they call toolbox talks, which is, a couple of guys in the depot, which is what she's doing with this Cleaner Streets team tomorrow, I think she said. Great stuff, and the more of that needs to happen, can engage those people out there on another part of the front line of BCBC.
Absolutely.
We'll start with, maybe we'll start with that and then go on to the other recommendations for this report then.
That's fine with me. Everyone else happy with that? I think silence is golden there. So yeah, I haven't got anything else. Meryl, have we missed anything?
So, Chair, I'll draft those up and send them around to the members present today for comment. If you can look out for that and come back to us quickly, and we can get them off then. And just the last item on the agenda then. Thank you.
No worries. All right then, members. If anyone has anything else, speak now. No. All right then. We'll move on then to agenda item 6, which is urgent items. I've been informed of no urgent items, so I will call this committee to a close at 11:38. Thank you everyone for coming. Hope you enjoyed this one night only appearance of me as Chair of COSC, and I will see